Hello, all you beautiful thinkers and wanderers. Welcome to Think Out Loud with me. I'm Natalie P., and if life has taught me anything, curiosity saves lives, and the best conversations are the ones we don't script. Life's a big, beautiful, messy learning opportunity, and here in my space, well, we let the inside voices out so others can hear, relate, and create with new purpose. This is a space for questions, connection, and those deep, real human conversations that crack open new perspectives. So grab a seat, open your mind and your heart, and let's think out loud together. Right?
Being recorded, I'm going to say, okay.
Okie dokie. I have with me Dr. Ingrid Clayton. It's an honor to have you here with me today. Your work has put a language to a trauma response so many of us feel but never really knew how to name.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to chat all things fawning.
All things fawning. This book, Fawning, it's a revelation, right? It's not just intellectual um, input. This is somatic input. And before I hit record, I was sharing with you my immediate reaction to some of your I've been following you on Instagram, and just to have you here, just you're giving a voice to a pattern that's been living quietly in our bodies, I think, and our relationships and our choices. And I just appreciate you writing it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. So before we dig into the research and the roadmap, perhaps even to unfawning, I want to start with you. Um, was was there a moment or a series of moments when you realized that you,
Hmm.
a clinical psychologist,
Yeah.
were fawning,
Hmm.
dot, dot, dot,
Hmm.
and that this wasn't just a personal pattern,
Hmm.
but a collective one that needed naming? Like, that's a big two-part question, right? Like,
Yeah.
where was the whoa, and then whoa on my part to whoa on the collective part?
Yeah. It's such a good question. And I think there were a few woes before the fawning woe. So I'll start there and say, I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been practicing in the field for about 20 years, specializing in trauma for 10 plus, somewhere around there. And meanwhile, Natalie, I didn't have trauma, right? It was sort of like I always knew what happened in my childhood. I probably did talk about it as though it was trauma, but I genuinely, even as a therapist, did not think it was quote unquote real trauma, right? And so part of this is because even in my training and a lot of the way that the mental health field still sees it now, traumatic events are the big events that everyone can agree are traumatic events. And yet, what we now know to be true is that the daily, pervasive cuts to your psyche, the neglect, the, abandonment, the gaslighting, emotional manipulation, all these things, living in active addiction, all of these things create the same pattern of ongoing distress in the body, right? So we now have PTSD and we have complex PTSD, which is based on complex trauma. So here I am in the field, I'm learning about complex trauma, and yet I'm still thinking this does not apply to me. And basically, my stepdad, who was a perpetrator of all kinds of things in my story, he died. And when he died, my body felt safer on the planet than it had ever felt before, just spontaneously. And it led to this writing, this like really compulsive need to write down all these stories, not just from my childhood, but my adulthood, right? Like my first marriage and when I was actively addicted and all kinds of things. And after years it took me of engaging in this process, I could finally one day look back at my own story from a trauma therapist's eyes and go, oh, I have complex trauma. That's what this is, right? It was like piecing together these dots or putting together this puzzle. And I hear this from complex trauma survivors all the time, right? Because with complex trauma, it's just the air that you breathe. It's just your day to day. We don't look at it as traumatic. It's just all we know. And then most of us are told it's no big deal, right? Like you're being too sensitive, let it go, right? So we're also encouraged actively to get over it. And that's what I tried to do in 8 million different ways. And yet you don't just get over it. You know, the passing of time, in my case, decades, didn't just wipe it away. So first I had to name complex trauma. I also at that time named narcissistic abuse, which felt very important in terms of my stepdad's characteristics and sort of all of the buzzwords about how that plays out. It is absolutely, you can map all that over my childhood. And then as I started to write more about these experiences of what my traumatic events did to me and how I carried that into the rest of my life, honestly, I was even going on Instagram and sort of sharing more publicly these experiences that I was just trying to articulate for myself. And someone said, hey, have you heard of Pete Walker's work on fawning? And I was like, no. And I go and look up Pete Walker. He's a psychotherapist who specializes in complex trauma. His definition of fawning, of like mirroring and merging with others, right, for relational safety. And the way he talked about coining the term is seeing, it was like a National Geographic show where he saw this wolf and this other wolf, like a pack, and this outlier wolf. And he thought, oh, for sure, they're going to go for it, right? Who's going to be the alpha male? And instead, he saw this wolf like, hey, guys. Doing, right? Starts to like butter up the pack. And he was like, wait a second, like I know that behavior. And then he turns around and he walks across his living room and he stubs his toe on his couch, you know, when you kick it super hard. And he reflexively goes, oh, I'm so sorry, right? So he apologizes to the
To the
couch.
couch.
And in this moment, right, and his work as a trauma therapist at the time, you know, it just became so clear to him, wait a second, this immediate reflexive response is a relational trauma response. And we can see it sort of show up in all these different ways. It's a relational response, so it's context dependent, which is kind of what we lost in the people-pleasing language or even the codependent language, right? Some of that stuff is just like, well, Natalie, stop trying to control people, right? It's like,
Right.
I was never trying to control, I was never trying to manipulate. I was honestly never even trying to please. I was trying to stay as safe as possible in an unsafe situation. And what we know is that the body will turn to the response that is most likely to succeed in a nanosecond. The body decides. Just like in the animal kingdom, you see an animal dart when they hear a sound, right? They don't go, am I being ridiculous, right? They don't stop to think it through, right? In fact, for us, the prefrontal cortex goes offline. It's primitive, instinctual response that happens without our preference or opinion. So the second that all of this landed in my body, it was like I finally, after decades, I have 3 degrees in psychology. I'm in a private practice. I've been in a million 12-step programs. I've read all the books, and all of it left me feeling broken. Broken because why haven't I cracked this code? Why can't I figure it out? Why can't I do these simple things that they're saying to do, like raise my self-esteem? And I had all the affirmations up on my mirror. I mean, I did it all, and none of it made me make sense to myself. I mean, that's the biggest key. When you look at our experiences through a bodily, trauma-informed place, it's like I finally made sense to myself. And I immediately saw my clients started to make sense to themselves too, right? We aren't damaged goods. We're not broken. We come by these behaviors absolutely honestly. And again, because it's complex trauma, so it's every day. It's every day. You say good morning when it's not a good morning at all, right? Just every day, every day. We start to confuse it for our personality.
Mm-hmm.
So now this chronic trauma response is in the driver's seat for a lot of us all the time, whether we're safe or unsafe. We're just guarding against potential annihilation again, right? Conflict is terror. And so we live in this place and it's like we just never knew the origin story. That's what fawning is to me. It's like the true and honoring and compassionate origin story of all these behaviors that we've talked about in different ways forever. But none of that helped me to overcome them, right? Because it was too oversimplified. And none of it allowed me to like myself, to truly care for myself, to actually heal from those original wounds, right? Because it wasn't even connected, really. So you asked me two questions and I answered at least 37, but that's what came to mind.
This is why we have to keep pressing into this space.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness gracious, you have blown my mind. And I know that you are in space, the spaces you're running in right now with this and being just turning the volume up on this
Yeah. It feels so
is
good to me. It's
so
like,
important.
yeah. Yeah.
Like mind blown. I'm seen.
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
I am like, oh, geez, Louise. I just started, writing so many notes. And I think something that really, um, I think that something that really nailed what you said nailed to the wall for me, where I really resonate is, um, I thought that I had to admit, I had to own
Mm-hmm.
my manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is like a recent part of my own return home is a lot of work, right? And part of what I decided at the time was that owning what I was doing
Mm-hmm.
and calling it manipulation
Right.
because I knew what I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. And I have experiences on both ends of the spectrum.
But
So
it wasn't always the case. I
yeah.
think what I'm hearing from you now is I'm not trying to bypass myself and get off the hook for the things where I knew I was
No.
manipulating. But what I know now
Yeah.
is, and especially when the toe stub, like I had a badge of honor to be able to flex and bend with the entire context of the room, including
Yeah.
the furniture, including the weather,
Yeah.
including yeah, I can be art on the wall if you need me to be.
That's right.
Um, what will make you comfortable? That is my calling. I thought it was my calling.
Yes, because then we can finally be comfortable. And listen, I'm not saying that we don't have to be accountable for our wrongs, but I'm saying that comes at the end of a much needed and longer process of healing. Because I say this all the time, you want to keep a Fawner fawning, tell them that they're doing something wrong, right?
Mm,
It's going to ignite that same thing. And now suddenly I'm going to shape shift
hmm
again for you to make sure that in your eyes I'm doing things right, but I'm going to miss the entire process where I'm actually attuning to myself and making it safe in my own skin so that I can legitimately show up differently. Right. So, in other words, yes, with some of my behavior, manipulative or even selfish, like yes, I can say that, but that is not the origin of that behavior,
mm,
and it doesn't honor the reason, right? Why those behaviors came online to begin with. I was genuinely saving my own skin, right? This new
hmm
book, this Fawning book, it opens up with me 13 years old in the
hmm
hot tub with my stepdad as he's grooming me. And I know, but I don't know. And I'm 13, so I'm confused. And he runs the household, right? My whole world is dependent on him liking me. So I need to stay in his good graces, but I need to keep him at arm's length at the same time. Like fawning is threading this very fine needle. And I didn't sit there going, oh, I need to like, you know, pull one over on this guy. I was just surviving the moment. And then I can see how that impacted the
Mm-hmm.
other moment for, quite frankly, the rest of my life. Because the body adapts. That's what the body does. We adapt, we change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So my body adapted and changed to navigate those circumstances that I lived in, day out. And then I went out into the world and I didn't know any different.
Hmm.
So to call that manipulative, it's like, wow, okay,
Yeah.
right? We weren't all that language. We're not sick. It's not a disease. We were stuck. We were stuck in a chronic pattern of
Mm-hmm.
trauma responses, which is what happens often with complex trauma. It's part of what the reenactment is all about, right? Sometimes reenactment is triggered by external events that trigger that old
Mm-hmm.
coping. And sometimes it's our coping that's reenacting a situation because it's all that we know.
Mm-hmm.
It's where I found safety, right? So, of course, I brought it to the table in just about any relationship. My body only knew safety. Most of my internal safety was developed in the context of being exploited, neglected, told I was X, Y, and Z, right? Not seen. And so, if that's my safety, and that's where I experienced it, my body was comfortable in those
Mm.
situations, and I found them over and over and over and over and over again.
Wow.
Yeah,
Birthing this book
yeah.
was, how would you describe it? Just as a personal
Well,
journey.
starting with the memoir, I'd say after trying everything else for decades, writing my memoir was the most healing and helpful thing I'd ever done. And it was me sitting here by myself at my kitchen table, usually in the middle of the night, night after night after night after night, right? For years. And because it was the thing after so long of wanting other people to validate my experience,
Mm.
right? Because as a fawner, relationally, our safety does not reside internally, it resides externally. I need
Mm.
you to validate me. I need you to like me. You have all the power.
Yep.
So I was disembodied in that way my whole life. I need them to validate it. When are they going to validate it? When are they going to actually see me? And the they, just became a different they
Yeah.
over time. And so writing it was this spontaneous. And what I love about this is it's unique to me, but it's very universal. My body knew that I needed to validate me. I needed to stop waiting
Mm-hmm.
for someone else to do it. I didn't know that that's what I was doing in the writing. I know it now. And I go, God, that's amazing. The body wants to heal. The body is like, we can't keep waiting. They're never going to change their mind, right? You have to see it. You have to own it. And this was the way that it happened, right? And so then at the end of that process, I said, if I have all this information and I still didn't know, I couldn't claim it for myself personally, how many people are living in that same space. And so I said, I'm going to publish the memoir, right? And so I did. It was self-published. I'm thrilled that I did that. I created this like vibrant, incredible community, largely through Instagram. And I couldn't believe my story felt so universal.
Mm-hmm.
Even as I'm writing it, I'm like, I thought people are going to criticize me and say it's not traumatic.
Mm.
No one's written me to say that, by the way. They do what I was thinking, which is like, well, Ingrid, I read your story, but my story is not as traumatic as your story. We're all comparing, and
Mm-hmm.
ours is less
Mm-hmm.
traumatic. Um, and what else was I going to say? I don't remember. But anyway, so that was the first experience, and then later on, I connected with the women who are now my agents, Jan Bomber and Lauren Hall at Folio Lit, and they read my memoir and knew that like the larger, mainstream publishing world was hearing about this fawn response, right? And they were like,
Mm-hmm.
Ingrid, and the second that they told me that anybody would want a whole book on the fawn response, it's like I think about it now. my whole body was like, that's my book. My whole life has led up to my ability to write this book. And then that book flew out of me in 6 months, right? It was like this. It started from a place of like, I don't know that I have anything to say on this. And then I wrote a proposal and I was like, I have so much to say. I have so much to say. And then I turned to my practice, my private practice, to my clients that we've been, working with this language and these tools of trauma healing. And I was like, I'm going to write a book on this. And I would love to include like real people's real experience, not these composite characters that end up in a lot of, self-help books along these lines. And everyone who participated said like, yes, before I could finish, ask, because similarly to me, they were like, I know tons of people that don't know what fawning is.
Yeah.
If I can help them with my story, right? Like, how amazing. And then we got to mine their stories, just like I mined my own. We were able to go in even deeper in these like interviews and written questionnaires. And they're telling me, one of the clients in the book, I've worked with her and known her for 16 years, off and on. We've worked together. And, her along with other people, they would be like, oh my gosh, Ingrid, I don't think I've ever told you this before. Right. So as we're like mining the depth things, suddenly they become aware of like, I didn't even know until this moment, right? So there's just this wealth. It's my heart and it's my client's heart on the page, right? So it's really, it's like, it's like my love letter to the lived experience of what so many of us have lived through and again, like been shamed for and told why do you care what people think about you? Just get over it. And it's like, because my life has depended on what people think of me.
Yeah. Boy, I've given myself some grief about that.
We all have.
Yeah. Why can't you just not care? Natalie, like, why can't you just turn it off? What is like, why? Yeah, it's a beautiful realization that it's a painful and beautiful realization. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
painful and beautiful. Yes.
yeah. And the beauty, I think, comes in the storytelling and the connection of the story and the words that and what you described. And I need to put this out and let me bring stories together, and this needs to be in a place where we're excavating up, and who knows who it's going to touch. That's the entire driving force behind this podcast.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It excavates. As soon as somebody
Mhm.
hears it, they text me or they ping me or they say, right.
Yeah.
Never thought about it that way.
I love that. Yeah.
Right? I'd never thought about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Curiosity, it saved my life.
Yes. Yes. Curiosity and just having the conversation, right? Because
Yeah.
every time I have a conversation, even though I may touch on similar points, it's the reflection and it's the dialogue where I suddenly go, oh, there's like a nuanced nugget in there I'd never even
Mm-hmm.
seen. And now it's not just for me, but it's for the collective. And that's so exciting to me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, conscious raising. It's
Yes.
empowering. Yeah.
Yes. So we have a lot of people buzzing. Oh my gosh, am I fawning?
Fine. Yeah, you might be. You might be. And it's
Am I being too nice?
yeah, you might be. And, I'm also big to say I am grateful for all of our trauma responses, right? There is a time and a place for each and every one of them. They saved our butts, they're genius. And again, not with conscious awareness do they come online. So I'm sure I fawned this morning and yesterday and the day before that. And I do not live in a 24/7 survival mode, fawning in the driver's seat life. And I did live there for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
think we can find more flexibility but we always have to have some grace for, like, first of all, it's not just that my body sort of spontaneously, springs into action, but this is context dependent.
Yes.
And a lot of us are in unsafe situations, right?
Yes.
You need to fawn because you need your paycheck to feed your family, right? You're a person of color and you live in a place where people of color, right? So it's it's really an adaptive response when you are marginalized, disempowered.
Hmm.
So I never want to shame us for fawning either, I guess is the biggest point, right? It's sort of like, again, I don't think I know our bodies aren't meant to live in survival mode. We have all kinds of repercussions for it. Um, and, I don't have the magic wand that can change the context.
Hmm.
None of us
Hmm.
do. So, um, that's the reality.
Yeah. Well, the the realization and the coming online with things, I think there's stages of realization, right? Where there's a recognition like, oh, I think I know what she's talking about, and
Yeah.
two, right? And then I start to dig and I say, oh, yeah, there is something here. And then this kind of rolling out of ahas that then all of a sudden are sitting in your lap, and then this, because we've been in that survival state and that is all we know to do. It's, oh my gosh, I got to course correct quick, like you said, like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm wrong, I got to shapeshift into right, what is right, so just in the realization there is unwinding to be done, right? Which
Yes.
leads to like the beauty, I think, of things like social media,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
it gives us, I think, the social part
Hmm.
plus the media part has given us a chance to connect on story and um, and hearing it lived experience in real time and being able to really set our own algorithm, if you will, of
Hmm.
what we're feeding our mind, right?
Hmm.
And when something like this, when I land on something like you, and I think that's how I even reached out originally, was on Instagram, to say, oh, you're in my feed now, sister, because this I recognize, right? And now I need to know, and now I can become an advocate. And now what do I bring into it? It's the podcast, and I need to put my own amplifier behind it, and turn to page 7, like the things roll out, the ripples roll out,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Um, there are specifics in your book. Um, there are real there is real lived experience in your book, to help people recognize in themselves, maybe as a mirror. Can we give like 4 or 5 more minutes on there's a they in this equation, right? So I want to talk, how does fawning show up in unexpected places? I want to put, like, there's a listener or two out there. Like, let's put, as a parent, what does fawning look like in activism? And you've said, my paycheck depends on fawning. So I just want to get one more layer down, so
Yeah.
that there might be some recognition for, say, a parent or someone who is right now trying to be involved and wants to be involved in activism, or in, like, give me a couple
Yeah.
layers.
I mean, you go to the parent piece. To me, that's the hardest piece of all. It's like that's black belt unfawning. But I will say that as a parent myself to now a 9-year-old, part of the other experience that brought me to the need to directly work on and heal from trauma was because having a child was so triggering, right?
Hmm.
All of the parenting content was aimed at kind of him, or these parenting strategies, they weren't aimed at like, how do I regulate my own nervous system because I'm so deeply triggered because no one ever held that kind of space for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or as a Fawner specifically, like conflict is death, conflict is annihilation, right? And so even though my son was acting like a perfectly appropriate toddler, right? If he's like kicking or yelling, like, oh, I couldn't really hold space for those things in a way that I wanted to. And then talk about shame, right? Like, oh
Mm-hmm.
gosh, like I'm such a horrible mom, or however I beat myself up for all of that. So a lot of this boils down to trauma healing, right? It's like really attending to those deeper wounds that are informing the chronic
Mm-hmm.
response. But generally speaking, like how does that show up? And this is in any context with friends or with colleagues. I go back to that idea that I don't have as like a chronic fawner real personal autonomy. I only exist in relation to you or you or you. And we as human beings are wired for relationship, right? Like that's just how we come into the world. But the fawner takes it to, it's like we never really quite differentiate, especially if you grew up with childhood trauma. So it's like we stay stuck in time where even as a full grown adult in my 30s, 40s, and now 50s, I still stay small, right? So if the relationship is like a 100% equation, everyone else probably gets 80% of that space. And I just take up whatever is left.
Mm-hmm.
How we do that is we get actually physically smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Our voices get softer, or we don't use our voice as much, right? We certainly don't insert our opinions very easily if it feels like someone else might have a different opinion. So there's this shrinking and smallness that can happen. Um, and so in the workplace, you might have an idea and you kind of put it out there and someone goes, "Oh my God, that's a brilliant idea." And they take that idea and they take it as their own. And we just go, oh, oh, maybe they also had that idea, or it's okay if they, right? And now we start making excuses for them and ourselves. There's this way that we, um, genuinely, talk about this thread a lot in the Fawning book, which is self-abandonment. That
Mm-hmm.
in order to prioritize and privilege other people and sort of prop them up or make it okay, we have to disconnect from self. And so we do it with all these strategies. And again, these are coming online just without our without our permission. It's just we start to kind of make sense of this thing that happens all the time, right? So we get passed over in jobs, or we really tolerate abusive behavior, And so that was the thing for me. I was like in another bad relationship after another bad relationship, different face, same dynamic. And I was like, what the hell, right?
Mm-hmm.
But truly, like I said before, my body learned to find safety in being helpful,
Yes.
being a caretaker, in solving your problems and seeing like the goodness in you and giving you the benefit of the doubt and waiting and waiting and waiting for things to change. I found safety in those dynamics through fawning. And so it was like match made in heaven, active alcoholic. Yes, yes, please.
Mm.
Right. Can't get a job or earn a cent. And, don't worry, I've got it. Right. So there's this like, don't worry, I've got it.
Uh,
And yet on the inside, most of us are pretty resentful, right? So if you look at where your resentments are, I think that's another way in and the patterns, right? What are the patterns with my friendships, with my relationships, with my job? We can usually see those easier because they're external representations of this thing.
mhm.
Um, So those are some of the signs, right?
Mhm.
Also, the resentment piece, because we're mad as hell, but we can't tell you that we're mad, right?
Mm-mm.
Conflict avoidance piece around like, We don't know how to advocate for ourselves. Advocacy, and here's the other truth, is that for most of us, myself included, advocating for ourselves made it worse. And that's why unfawning is so freaking hard, because I'm asking people to move into areas where it was probably the worst trauma of all, which is when we spoke up and when we tried to advocate and when we tried to do it differently, it made it worse. You're not believed, you're not taken seriously, people walk away, they make it your fault, it's victim blaming, right? So many of us have had this experience, and so we go, the body is wise, and it goes, why would I ever do that again? Why would I ever walk that plank again? And I'm actively encouraging people a teeny tiny step at a time while we're building different coping, internal safety. I'm saying, I want you to step out and walk on that plank. 1 inch, and then 1 inch, and then 1 inch, and then maybe one day. And most of my clients say it feels like they're jumping off a cliff. And so to keep the metaphor here, I'm saying, let's walk out, and one day you're going to get to the end of that plank and you're going to do the most glorious dive with these spins and this perfect, like authentic motion that your body wants to do. And it's so genius. And then you swoosh into the water and you swim like you've never swam. And you're going to feel like yourself, and you will know that it was all worth it. Because we get ourselves back. That's what we get when we jump. We jump literally into our fuller, highest integrated self over and over again, right? There's no finish line. It's a process, but you get the idea.
It's glorious.
Yeah. It's like, I forget exactly what you said before, painful and beautiful, but it's that all over again, right? Like terrifying. Oh my God, why am I doing this? It's too hard. It's too painful. There's so much grief. Every
Yes.
step that we take out onto that plank, it's like, no, my body can't hold this pain. But eventually we learn the difference between this like real discomfort. I mean, discomfort really doesn't quite hold it. But the difference between this experience of feeling all these unmetabolized feelings and danger, because our body
Yes.
doesn't discern. Initially, we just go, nope, it's all dangerous, not worth it. No, thank you, going home. I'm just going to stay here in the corner and keep to myself and be really small, and it's all good. And no, I'll pay for the check. It's on me. I'm not worrying about it. Right. Um, so this is what we're stepping into. And it is part terror, but it's also lots of parts of reclaiming.
Mm-hmm.
For some of us, it's not reclaiming, it's claiming it all for the first time. What it means to be you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And feeling, I think about the very significant possibility of shame.
Yes.
And I've in my own, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about my own cycles in my life. Uh, so many folks have heard me wax on about, I get to these points in my career. I find the perfect CEO, and I start at the bottom, and within a few weeks oh, they promoted that fast. Well, look at that girl. Sir. Burp, 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 burp. Well, then within, no time, I'm number two, holding all the keys to the castle, and all the passwords are in my back pocket. And I've got, I know their family, and I know what they're going through, in their private life.
Mm.
And none of it's mine, and none of it is anything. And what are you even doing? You offend me.
Yes.
You offend me. And then I look and I'm like, I have all the keys to oh my God. And then I freak. I throw everything. I
Yeah.
burn the shit down.
Yep.
I go into hiding.
Yeah.
I've done this. Ingrid, I can't even tell you how many times I've done this over my life.
I believe it.
And then I stand back up. It's like my story. I'm coming back, and I'm going to do this my way. I'm going to do it this time. And What are you going to do, Natalie? I don't know. I'm just doing it different.
Yeah.
Right. But I didn't this is another piece in that link of why I couldn't quite do it different.
Yeah.
Because as much as I recognize and I own my pieces in that cycle, like I've done the work to make that connection. Woo.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And in those little mazes, some pretty wow, right?
Yeah.
Some little offshoots of some big T, little, yeah, YMCA. Like
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's it's remarkable to me how our minds can continue to push into intelligence and words and ways of shaping words and ways of putting words together that unveil realizations for humans to become better. Like it takes Ingrid Clayton writing it just takes another next step with an idea and the packaging of it, and it becomes freedom for people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because when I even hear your story just now, where my energy goes is to the probably very young part of you who geniusly learned, how can I serve the people in charge so that I can get all the keys and all the passwords and be so valuable, because that is my only currency in the world, because I'm not seen or valued for anything else, right?
That's work I'm still working on. Yeah.
So that part, right? So many of us would, when we're trying to change and go, why would I do that? We want to just throw that part away when
Yeah.
that's the one who saved our lives. And so I go, oh my gosh, how do we just visit with that really, really wise one, right? And
Yeah.
I love parts work or reparenting, all the different ways, inner child work, for doing that, because that's the one that's in the driver's seat going, don't
Hmm.
worry, I got it. I can do it again, right? But the other piece is someone was asking me in this Q&A thing about like, well, why is fawning so pervasive? And I'm like, well, there's a lot of reasons. And one of them is because it's taught, it's applauded,
Yep.
it's expected, it is highly, highly reinforced, right? So all these jobs, okay, you work your way up to the top and you're number two. That is deeply, deeply reinforced. And so unfawning is also untangling from that it was our body's way initially to keep us safe, but then people responded to it, right?
Yeah.
Um, again, particularly for children who are by nature disempowered, for women in a patriarchy, for, other marginalized groups, it's like, we're not the top of the food chain and our bodies know it.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we go, oh, yeah, I do need your validation. I do need your stamp of approval. I do need all of it. And it's radical
Yeah.
to unhook from that. It's pretty radical.
Yeah.
And again, it feels deeply unsafe because it literally is the world that we're living in. So it's also why we go slow and we bring that curiosity that you talked about, because we don't want to re-traumatize ourselves. This isn't about like, this is what I can't stand about some of the oversimplification of like, well, why don't you just set a boundary? And why don't you just not care what people say? Because setting boundaries steamrolled me, and it's not freaking
Yeah.
possible, right?
Yeah.
You don't just put on a cape and like just act as if you feel like $1,000,000 and and it's like, no, that stuff never worked. I have to be with the truth of the fact that I feel like maybe 30 cents. Okay. And I got to stay there. And I got to be really tender with the truth of that and be with myself in it, because no one else ever was. And I'm tired of trying to override myself, override this truth to arrive
Mm.
somewhere else out there, which doesn't actually exist. It's more of the same, even in our healing. We're still fawning, right? By
Yeah.
doing it perfectly. And I'm running to yoga now, and I'm going to have a
Yeah.
green juice, right? It's like, maybe you just needed a nap. Maybe you need to
Yes.
frame FU into a pill, right? There's no prescription. There's no perfect path. It's all about curiosity and inner attunement and noticing what's there and attending to it. That's the wisdom of the body. It's not glamorous. It's not, it's not, it's not a big bundle of joy, right? I think a lot of us are like, well, why would I want to do that? I don't know, as though we can toxically, positively, or, spiritual bypass sort of all of the tough stuff. And I don't know. I haven't met anyone who's been able to do that effectively. If someone
Yeah.
has, you know, call me up, we'll bottle and sell it and make $1 billion. But in the meantime, this is the painful yet beautiful path.
Yeah. This is the experience of being human.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's something that has long sat with me, is that this is I think it is just a beautiful a blessing to be able to journey back to places, um, whether it's this lifetime or previous, and just understand and shed light on space that didn't have light at the moment.
Yeah.
It just didn't,
Mhm.
it wasn't, it happened and it didn't have the light, and now you do, and you can go back into it, with the beauty of your mind and your whole entire body involved in it,
Mhm.
um, and reconcile some things.
Yeah.
And the reconciliation, I think, for me, has it's taken all forms. It's you mentioned, no, there's no set prescription to this. There's no timeline. There's no nothing. It's all of the above and all of the everything that you can, right? It's
Right. Yeah.
starts with the willingness. And
Yeah.
um I just we use words like excavation. We use words
Mhm.
like, stalking, going back and stalking the places in our
Hmm.
lives and who we were, to say, what were you doing? No, what were you? And I use that word. No, I mean, that's a charged word for some, but to say, like, what were you doing there? I
Mhm.
think we have ability to look back at those little places.
For sure.
There's so many different modalities and tools, just to even just take a peek.
It's so true, and that was one tricky thing that I encountered with the Fawning book because, my editor rightfully wanted it to be prescriptive, right? Because these self-help books are prescriptive. And I was really just like, I can't give anyone 10 tips and tricks to, right? It's just, I could, and I think people do, and I think it's dishonest. I think it
Mm,
forms helpfulness rather than actually being helpful. And so I really tried to turn that on its head. It's also why, yes, I'm Dr. Ingrid Clayton, but I lead with my survival story. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm not an expert who has it all figured out, right? I'm in the trenches just like you. There is no finish line. Don't look to me as like, oh, one day I want to be like her. That's a great marketing tactic, maybe for a lot of people. I want you to be who you were meant to be. And so that
Hmm.
means I don't know what the road is for you. I'm going to tell you everything I've used in my practice. I'm going to take these 7 clients that have given me their story and shown you all the very different ways that they have learned to attune to themselves and that's looked like in their life and the different therapy modalities. And then I'm going to say, and this is just my teeny tiny scope of what I know, right? I can't make a list of like, well, here's all the trauma therapies, and these are the ones that are sanctioned. It's like, go trust your own life and be
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah.
That's so hard. It's
It's
hard.
so hard.
I want to give people a roadmap, but I believe in the power of shared story, that if something lights you up on the insides, like when my agents told me about a book about fawning, I was like, I know that my body,
Hmm.
whole body, yes, so be curious about the whole body yeses in your own life. Be curious what your body's telling you, where it wants to lean in and where it's going, right? That's not safe. And just that attunement Oh my, it's a game changer. It's
Mm-hmm.
major. It sounds so small, but it's enormous because we're taking our gaze that's been perpetually external and we're turning it back towards ourselves. And listen, fawners are creative and genius and empathic and all of these delicious, wonderful things. And then we get to take all of that and turn it towards ourselves. Like it just enriches this process even more, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, anyway, I went off on a tangent there.
I love it. I love the tangent. I love all of it. I just, yeah, I'm fascinated by the concept and just really grateful to have had the opportunity to connect with you in a way. Yeah, this conversation has had several moments of impact
Mhm.
in my own little noodling on things.
I'm so glad it's been
Yeah,
me. I'm so grateful that you asked.
yeah, I appreciate you. What are you up to as you take this beautiful book and all of your good doings out into the world? Are you staying local to where you are? Are you traveling? Like, tell me what you're up to as this all comes to life.
And so I'm definitely staying put here with my family largely, and I still have my practice. I'm not taking new clients. It's just there's so much happening with the book and all of that that I had to kind of shut that door. But I'm really intentional about growing more community online, whether that's Instagram or Substack. I've moved there recently to have more long form content, and now readers of the newsletter are they're sending me their sort of unfawning journey, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
even more experiences, community reflections, and I'm loving that. I'm loving like how does it look for you and what is it like and what does it feel like, and so I'm loving all of that. And then Fawning comes out September 9th, and so just spreading the word and getting excited about that. And there will be a couple dates as it gets closer to publication, probably in LA and New York. But
Okay.
or go to my website. But if people follow me in any of the places, I'll be sure to
Well, yeah,
be
you'll be on
shouting all the
Instagram.
opportunities. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to do some live Q&A workshop type things. So yeah, people get on the newsletter if they want to know what's happening when.
Okay, good. Yeah, and I'll do a plug for your Instagram. I love it. It's
Oh, thank you.
we talk about just producing content and being our real selves and putting ourselves out there and living your work and yeah, I just you've done a great job of curating um, putting yourself, making yourself your brand. It's beautiful. Um, and then yeah, your work is just it stands on its own. So um, you've given us just a load of things to think about. And more than that, I'll say this for myself, um, permission to choose something different.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I get excited
Yeah.
by that. Permission, period. I get excited about. So thank you for that reflection and
Yeah.
having me here today.
You bet. I would welcome you back in a heartbeat. And to everyone listening, if you, in some way, shape, or word, saw yourself in any part of this conversation, September 9th is when Fawning comes out, is released. Um, get yourself on Ingrid's newsletter, follow her on Instagram. Um, I'll no doubt be in the know when it hits. And but I would just encourage everyone to continue to think out loud on things like fawning and what it means to live our best lives and what's stopping us. So, Dr. Ingrid Clayton, Ingrid, my friend, my
Yeah.
Instagram friend. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you thinking out loud with me.